In today's video, I'm finally gonna get a chance to show how to use the wax seal stove and spoon set that I got on my trip to New York. We're gonna start with some wax pellets and a seal and end up with something like this. Let's take a look. I'm gonna be talking about wax seals. Now, most people are gonna think of wax seals, they're gonna think of watching a period movie or something like that, where someone is putting a big old glob of wax on the back of a scroll or a letter and sealing it with a signet ring or something like that. But in the modern times, this is more of what we're looking at here. This is a sample of different wax seals that I did earlier of different designs. Now, I've got 7 different seals of different designs and types. So let me talk through a little bit of what we're looking at here, and then I'll actually do a seal onto a note card and an envelope to kind of show you how it works. So when wax seals started, it was like I mentioned, you'd see in a movie, people would have a signet ring or something like that. They would put wax on to seal a letter to be sure that it was staying private, and then they would push their ring down on and it would leave an imprint of the insignia. And that's what these stamps recreate. Now, the stamps are relatively straightforward. These are 3 that my wife got in New York, and I'll put a link to the stationery store video where she actually purchased the wax stove and spoon kit from Goods for the Study. And then these are 3 different designs that she got: a heart, a dog paw, and then a heart with a kind of a flame insignia around it. And then these are some other ones that we got just to have. We have a letter D for our last name initial. Got an octopus. We got a wolf. And then there's a debate. It originally, when looking at it, it looked like it was going to be a wolf, but we're thinking it might be a fox on a book. My wife is doing a side journey as an author, and she has a wolf in that, so we got some that are thematic, so if she needed to use them, she had that ability. Now, in terms of the wax itself, you can get wax in a package or something like this. This is the wax that we got at Goods for the Study. It's all in one color from Written Word. That's the maker of this set. This is forest green. This is pretty expensive for what it is. I much prefer, for a variety and figuring out what colors, I got a sample set of a variety of colors through Amazon to kind of learn what colors we want, and then I'm more likely to buy better quality after the fact. But for experimentation and playing around, it's nice to have a variety of colors. You can see on this block, these are ones I did in a live stream earlier, just kind of making some of this in prep for shooting this video. You can mix different colors together to make your own patterns and designs, and sometimes they work better than others. Like this orange one and that gray one there are the same, but that black and silver and gray really doesn't show the design very well versus the same design on the orange. So you can do an experimentation with the different colors and come up with your own formulation. Here's a couple other examples. This is just on a piece of rhodia paper. Let me get that where it's facing the right way. Try and get that where it shows up well. That is the octopus. Here's that same wolf or fox on an envelope. This is the octopus on an envelope, and this is one where I didn't have enough wax. That's part of figuring out with your different size stamps and wax of how many pellets you need. And then that's a simple heart, with Valentine's Day coming up, kind of made one that's thematic. So let's get down to actually doing a stamp. So in terms of the little stove, it's just a tea candle underneath, and those are the basic tea candles like you can find in the dollar store or online, whatever. You just light that and let it start getting warm. Now, for colors, I want to do something that shows up really well. I'm going to do this light greenish teal. Now, some of these I did learn in doing my samples. Some of these marbled looking ones do seem to have some shimmer or glitter in them. Now, as I was talking about how many pellets you need, if you look at these two, for example, this is a larger insignia than this one. So this one I found really, if you want to get a good solid stamp on acrylic, you'd want 5 pellets, and on paper, you can get away with 4 because you don't really want it as thick on the paper. So since I'm going to do this one on the acrylic first, I'm going to go in and put in, I'm going to put a white one, another white one. And this is part of the fun I found, is just playing with different wax combinations to see, what works well and what doesn't together. And I've been using the colors that I could never see using in a real world scenario, like bright orange, as my testing colors. I could see using a lot of these for actually sealing letters. It is the International Correspondence Month, or NaCoWriMo, in the month of February. So if you're participating in that and writing letters, you might be sealing them with wax seals. So let's set this to the side. Now, I did learn a little bit of trial and error in terms of this stove and spoon set. Be careful when you're around it. In the live stream that I did, I was reaching over to get a different seal, and I popped that, and luckily the wax had not yet melted. It flipped over, and I was able to pick it up and put it back onto the stove without it making a mess, luckily. So, and these are just acrylic stamping blocks. I have another video that I haven't made yet on the Well-Appointed Desk. Sells a smaller version, and they sell the stamps that go on. And actually, I have one here from an ink stamping. They're reusable silicone stamps that just stick on the blocks. So that's why I had some extra acrylic blocks. And when you put it on acrylic, you can actually pop the seals off so they're almost like a coin. So, if you didn't have it on a letter, but you wanted to include it, or you wanted to put a seal on something like wrapping paper, you could do it on acrylic, pop it off after, and then use just a piece of tape or like a glue stick or something, just to give it a little bit of stick onto a paper that might not be as receptive to hot wax. So as you can see, this is melting down here. And as it melts, the colors are going to mix, and you can kind of, let's see if I can get that up a little bit closer here. You can see the pellets are still in there. So you want to give this enough time for all of the waxes to melt together. Now, all the wax is not gonna, it's gonna stay segmented somewhat until you pour it. When you pour it is when you're able to get some of the overlap. So I'm going to actually do the octopus stamp. I think that's one of my favorite. I'm a scuba diver, and I love octopus. They're one of the coolest things to see when you're diving, so I really liked that stamp. And this has a nice deep impression in the stamp itself, so far it's done a really good stamp each time I've used it in trying them out. One other thing to mention, these smaller stamps, these are the directions, say for a 1-inch on the packet that came with it, that you'd put 2 pellets for a 1-inch. I've really found, in reality, you'd want at least 2 pellets, if not 3, on the smaller ones, and then I found 4 for this size has been the right number, and then 5 for the bigger one for the seals. So this is just about getting to the point. If you notice, you can see when you tilt it, the wax, it's not yet very liquidy. You really want it to have be nice and melted, and it's gonna never be a runny liquid per se, but you want it to, when you pour it, you can get a controlled pour, especially if you're doing it in a letter, so you can get it on the flap and the letter itself. So just a little bit more here. And the other thing that I'll mention while we're waiting on that to seal is the you can get custom seals made. And then there's some shops, I know Papier Plume down in New Orleans, they have on their website, and I've seen, a large selection of different stamps. And then there's places online where you can get a custom. So say you have your own logo or design or just a signature or something unique, you could always get a custom made stamp. And these stamps just unscrew. So it's common where you might get multiple stamps in one handle, where you can just screw them in and then put them on. And then the other thing I found with these is you want to make sure that you have, what's the top, so that if you're stamping on a letter specifically, you want to be sure that your, design is facing upwards. I made a little scratch just in the brass, so I have a visual indicator, and then I also tend to double check. I'll put the upside, set it in front of where I'm going to be stamping. So here we go. This looks like it's going to be melted enough. So I'm just going to pour it on there. And you don't have to rush when you're doing the stamp, but you also, don't want to give it too much time to start cooling before you get the stamp on there. And you can see, and with this angle probably doesn't show all that well, that you'll get kind of the dangling wax. Put that back on there. And then I tend to push it on and let it sit. That will give it a good imprint. Now, I did have someone ask on the live stream earlier if you just push it in like you'd see, with a ring or something like that. This orange one was actually a push. Just push it on and then take it off. On actual paper, there's a little bit of a chance that you might pull away from the paper if it hasn't had a chance to cool. So unless you're in a rush, I would just leave it on there and give it a little bit of time to seal. And while this is going, I'm going to throw another couple of pellets in so that I can do one on an actual piece of paper. Now, since I didn't clean the spoon out, the next stamp we do is going to be a mixture of teal, white, silver, and kind of copper. So let's go in and pop this off. And you see it comes right off. And then, see if I can kind of get that where it's got a little bit more contrast. Shooting through clear acrylic is not the easiest. But you can see that the design is nice and pronounced on there. Now, there is a product, if you say you really wanted that design to pop, it's kind of like comes in a little container like chapstick might, where you can open it and dab it with a Q-tip or whatnot, and you run it across the top and it'll put a gold or silver or whatever color you get, so it makes that raised section stand out. So that's neat to have, but this is just kind of an introductory video to wax stamping, how it works and whatnot. Now, in terms of doing it on an envelope, these are not nice stationery envelopes. These are just extra kind of business envelopes that I had sitting around that I'm going to do this on. And as you can see, like I was talking about, you can peel these off the acrylic. That peels right off. And then now you could use this and tape it or glue it. So you could easily take a dab of glue stick, put that on there. If you think the person might want to keep the insignia or something, versus ripping it into two. And from my experience in opening these, I haven't opened a ton, but normally it's going to stick to one side or the other. So if you really wanted to keep it, you'd probably cut the envelope at the top. But let's let this get melted here. And I'll probably go through and do some close-up shots that I can throw over the top of some of this, especially while waiting on the wax to melt to kind of show in closer detail what this looks like when pouring the wax and putting the actual stamp on, just so it shows shows a closer view. This overhead angle is great, but it's not the best for something that really needs a side view as well. Okay, so now that that's had a chance to melt, let's go in and take it. And when you're pouring on an envelope, you want to be sure you start it on the seal and then kind of work it into a rough circle so that when you press the actual stamp on there, you're going to get, ideally you'd want 50-50 perfectly on both sides, and then your stamp will get a perfect ring around the middle. And you want to plan for that. Will it be perfect every time? It will not. So now that we have that, make sure we have the right orientation. Then press that on there. Now, with doing it on an envelope or on paper, give it a little bit more time to cool, because you don't want to try and pull this off so quickly that it might pull the wax away from the paper or rip the paper. Especially thinner. This is a cheap, thin envelope. If this was a nicer, heavier weight paper stationery envelope, it wouldn't be as much of a concern. You see these wax seals still used a lot on things like wedding invitations and things like that. And then I'm not going to show it on the video, but just to talk about the wax that's left, you can use a basic paper towel. I normally would just put a little bit of water in there and let that kind of get heated up, and then you can use a Q-tip or just a folded up paper towel to help break that away. So this should have had enough time to cool now, and then taking it off, and then you can see we've got a nice clean wax seal on the envelope. It's got, this was not glued or taped or anything. You can see it's holding the envelope closed like it's intended. So, that's a basic overview on wax seals. Have you ever used a wax seal? If you have any experience with it, leave a comment below. I'd love for people to see, and we can all learn from each other in terms of if there's any tips or tricks that you found that's made it easier for you, or any lessons that you've learned that you think it might be beneficial for others to hear. Drop a comment below so that we can read those and see feedback. I did learn in doing earlier, be very careful with the spoon, because you don't want to knock it over on the desk. One other thing to mention is there are a couple of other wax options. If you don't have to get a fancy stove and spoon. Wax comes also in like a candle type stick. They're normally a rectangular like column with a wick on the end where you can light it, hold it above and let the drips fall where you're going to be sealing, and then use your seal. And now you can also get sealing wax that'll go in a hot glue gun, so you could just put it in, put out a little dollop, and then stamp it as well. Okay, so hopefully you found that helpful as kind of an intro to wax stamps that you can use on invitations, letters, stationery, or whatever your use case. Just wanted to kind of show a final. These are just, once again, some examples of the different stamps done on acrylic. And then this is the one that we did in the video that's just the letter D done in a wax mixture. So if you have any questions about the wax seals or stamping or anything you saw in the video, be sure and drop a comment below so we can take a look at that and get those questions answered for you. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing so you can see new videos like this as they're released, and thanks for watching.